You know what's crazy is today I went into work and I almost immediately just felt so tired. I was like, why do I not want to be here right now? Like granted, yes, it's work. Like nobody really wants to be at work. But I generally like where I work, which is such a rare experience in life. But today I was like, I don't want to be here. Like I felt kind of almost depressed, if not depressed, and like the shift dragged on a little bit. And then towards the end, we had a regular come in. He comes in like every day. He's 10 years older than me. It's pretty stimulating to talk to him because he's got like sane opinions. You know what I mean? Like his rants are like valid. And so there's like some kind of like unspoken, like, I get where you're coming from. Like you're not just another NPC type person.
You're on the same vibe.
You're on the same vibe. And today he was like, it's funny. He made the comment. He was like, something is off about today. And I was like, I didn't tell him anything. I was like, oh shoot, something definitely feels off today for me. And he's like, my dad was asking me like, why do you look so sad? What's wrong with your eyes? Like they look tired. And I was telling him like, dang, dude, I feel really off today too. He's like, you know what it is? What it is like everybody's kind of looking the same right now. And I that's one of the reasons why I felt that way is because as soon as I went into work, like everybody I worked with today just had this energy to them that was like heavy, you know? Like almost when your parents are fighting and you can kind of tell
Right.
that like stillness in the air. It was
Yeah.
kind of like that at work. It was just lower. And I was like, what's this feeling?
Yeah.
And as soon as he said that, I was like, dude, yeah, I've been feeling the same way. And he's like, you know what I think it is? The adrenaline's finally catching up to all of us. All of us here are all adjacent to one of the biggest two LA fires that are happening like right now,
Yeah.
January 14th. And he's like, I think the adrenaline's catching up to all of us. And we're just kind of starting to really feel like tired from everything that had happened in the last 7 days.
Mm.
And he didn't say that, but I was like, wait a second. They started literally 1 week from today,
Yeah.
last Tuesday.
Yeah.
He even made the comment too. He was like, what's today? Tuesday? He's like, I don't know. Like I lost count of days. And like he works full time, you know what I mean? Like, but even he felt like cognitive dissonance.
Right.
So we all kind of felt it. And I was like, dang, yeah, I think it's just everything that's happening with the fires right now. I mean, like I've been hearing for the past 2 days from regular customers who had their homes burned down.
Dang.
And then customers I've never seen before who were like, my home burned down. I think every time I'd hear them, it would shake me. I would get intense goosebumps all over my body. And it's like you just feel this wave of empathy where you're like, fuck, that's a reality for them right now. They just lost everything. And most of them look really sad.
Yeah.
But like one woman in particular that got me today, like one older woman, a regular, such a nice lady. A joy to serve, seems very sensible. And, you know, and she's older. Like you rarely interact with people in their 60s or just 50s and above. You rarely interact with anybody 50 and above who isn't like bigoted in some way, right?
Yeah.
Or makes you uncomfortable.
True.
This woman definitely got to be like 60 something. Such a great woman, good energy to her, everything. She came in today and, you know, she ordered something. I messed up. I think I messed up in how I rung up her order in some way. And she was like, oh, it's fine. Like, never mind. You know, I don't need to have that. And I was like, oh, I could just fix it for you. No big deal. And she was like, no, to be honest, it literally doesn't feel like anything right now because this is not worse than losing your home, which I'm experiencing right now. And she was just being super candid with me.
Yeah.
And immediately I was just like, fuck. And I was like, oh no, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm so sorry. And she was like, yeah, I know, like, it's gonna, like, we'll figure it out. She was just basically like, we'll figure it out somehow. And she's like, at least I even have it better than my husband. And so apparently her husband was like injured amongst all that. And he came in later and he had like bandages all around his head.
Oh shit.
So I was like, what happened there?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to ask. But as soon as she mentioned her husband, she just like started tearing up and like crying. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't do anything more right in this moment right now other than just try to like empathize in any way I could.
Yeah.
So I've just been like hearing about these people that I see every week, multiple times a week, some of them every day, like almost every day, who have lost their homes. And it's just like, I've been there 30 years. Like, yeah, they're all over 50 for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They're white people. I would say about 30% of them were African Americans.
Mm-hmm. The people you saw come in today?
Yeah.
Okay.
Into my store. And I did, in fact, talk to a very, very wealthy, rich white person who was like, I'm in a lot of pain right now, but you know what? I have insurance and there's some people who don't.
So they were self-aware.
And in my head, I was like, thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
Because they knew that they could, it's just going to take time. It's an inconvenience. I lost 20 years, 30 years or something. But they were able to be like, damn, there's going to be thousands of people who aren't going to get anything and just become homeless.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow, like so much respect for that person to validate both pain. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Another interesting story. We have like a drifter who comes in, right? Sometimes he'll be gone for like 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
He's been back for like 6 months now, but before then he was gone for a long time. He comes in almost every day, right? Today I went into work and he saw me. Like, he was sitting outside. He like runs up to me. He's like, dude, look. He shows me his phone. He's like, dude, check this out. I was up in Eaton with a investigator to look at my home. And I was like, what?
Mm.
Oh, I'm thinking home. And I look at the picture, and it's just a campsite.
Oh shit.
He lives in the mountains.
Yeah.
So like every day he's going home like up the mountain, and he's like he had this not cheap tent.
Okay.
He had like a makeshift home built. He's like, that was my house before, and this is what the fire did. And it's like decimated it.
Dang.
So he was able to go up there because he was, like you had mentioned to me, like you can go once.
Yeah, yeah.
So he went with a investigator so that they could like make sure that he was, not lying or whatever.
Yeah.
And he took pictures of everything. And he's like, yeah, man, I'm assuming he takes pictures of his shit so that he knows if anybody's been there.
Right.
I just thought that was wild. Like,
damn.
He was immediately affected as well. Like, he also lost his home.
Hmm. Yeah, it's funny. So, I haven't paid attention the past 2 days, but essentially for most of the first week of the fires going on,
Yeah.
my whole area was just active, dude. Active. And it's not like that during the holidays, even during like Halloween night.
Yeah.
It's pretty like kind of dead,
Yeah.
And the past couple days is like just peak traffic, but all day. And the first 2-3 days, I figured like, people are probably preparing to evacuate if they need to,
Oh.
So getting maybe like last minute groceries and whatever.
Yeah, because it's going more east.
Yeah. So for context, those of you listening, Eden Fire is right above Altadena and Pasadena. Those are the areas in that area that were affected, but it was going east. So at one point, it made its way all the way up to, I believe, Arcadia. And
they shut down the 210 freeway.
Yeah. And anyone east of that got an evacuation warning. So if you lived in Monrovia, Duarte, you got a warning. And those first 2 days specifically, like, it looked like it might go east. That whole row of mountains, they're really dry. And so it was like just highly likely that it can move east and that you may have to leave. So anyway, so this first couple of days, I realized right away that shit, like this is real. This is happening, It's moving, and I'm seeing just people like there was like an urgency to the way people were moving around. I think it was the second day. So that Wednesday I went to go see if I could get a mask. And even for most of the time after COVID or after the quarantine period, I still wore masks in public. but I just stopped because I got tired of like having to get more masks,
Yeah.
and like I never paid for them. I got lucky and like I was always able to get them, but eventually I wasn't, and that's why I stopped. Like I was just stubborn. Like I just was not going to pay for a mask, you know,
Yeah.
because I usually got them free. So anyway, so I went to go try to get one, and I went to grocery outlet, and I saw, I guess, what would have been like the manager with the cashier handling a transaction. So right away I just walked over and I asked, "Do you sell masks?" And the manager turns to me. He's like, "Yeah, I'll just give you one. Just give me a second." I'm like, "Oh shit, all right." In that same moment though, there was a lady, I guess she was maybe like next in line. She turns to me. She's like, "Do you need a mask?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Okay, I'll be right back." Runs to her car, comes back, and I think initially she said, "Okay, I'll give you two." So goes to her car, comes back, and she had those masks that come in a bag.
Yeah.
Again, I never bought masks, so I don't know like the packaging they come in.
Yeah.
Usually they come in like boxes,
Yeah, they come in boxes.
but in her case, it came in a bag. So I was like, "Oh shit, thanks."
Dang.
And it was in that moment, I'm like, "Dang, like it's cheesy, but there are decent people out here,
Yeah.
you know." Because both she volunteered to give me a mask, and the manager was just gonna give me one from his office.
Yeah.
That's what he said. He's like, "I'll bring you one. Just give me a second."
Yeah, yeah.
And initially, I was gonna ask him because I thought she was gonna give me one. I was gonna ask him for just one more in case I would need one. But I was like, "Yeah, you know what? She already gave me one. It's fine." So I didn't bring it up to him. And then when I looked in the bag, there were like I think 5, for sure more than 2. So I'm thinking, "Oh shit, I'm loaded." So I'm good for the time being. And then in the days after that, there were fires that were visible from the Azusa area, but it never moved past a certain point. And the reason being is that the winds were blowing it west.
Yeah.
So the fire did move west of Eaton, and it moved north, but it didn't. It never moved past a certain point.
Yeah. But tonight, the moment we're having this conversation, tonight and tomorrow are supposed to be just as bad as last week.
Right. Yeah.
So right now, kind of everybody is like waiting for the coin flip to be like, okay, is it going to be
Right.
intense winds,
Yeah.
or are we going to get like a pass this time?
Yeah.
I think that kind of just added to the whole feeling of heaviness today. But yeah, I think this is, besides COVID, this is like the first real crisis that I'm experiencing. And I'm not even like at ground zero per se. Still relatively very, very close to a fire.
Yeah.
But like I'm not even at ground zero where some people have had their lives completely changed.
Right.
Like we still live close enough to where we're immediately feeling the effects of the crisis at hand.
Yeah.
So what exactly has happened in the last 7 days?
Yeah, that's a good question. What has happened? So as you said, there's like a heaviness, people have lost a lot. People know someone who's lost a lot.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, there's this like unbridled like positivity that I don't see often.
Yeah.
Usually you see it in certain places or like if you're at an event somewhere, but like just in the air.
Yeah. Here, check this out. This crisis isn't as political for us
Yeah.
as it was for everyone during COVID. So everybody
yeah.
outside of California right now is trying to politicize this, and
Which we will get to in a second.
they're trying to politicize this and they just have almost like very little empathy.
Yeah.
Because every conservative just like hates Californians because they just have all these stereotypes about us.
Yeah.
And for us, we're like all experiencing this right now.
Yeah.
So yes, it's political for us too, but first it's crisis. So that's why there's that sense of urgency. And what shocked me is what you said. There's been this energy of like, we're going to show up for each other.
Yeah.
And it's mostly, millennials and Gen Z. And I've seen older people too. Like I've seen a handful of Gen X also come out as well. But the majority is like young people. And I'm just like, wow, this crisis spans from I mean, the world thinks Los Angeles because that's all that the media is reporting, Los Angeles.
Yeah.
But to us, Los Angeles is actually a relatively small place. Geographically, though, Los Angeles County is very, very far reaching. But we wouldn't necessarily say like Pasadena is Los Angeles. But the rest of the world sees like Los Angeles is, SoCal and everything.
Right.
But there's this greater sense of we are LA.
Yeah.
People who love Los Angeles, people who love being here in SoCal, they'll wear that badge like proudly.
Yeah.
Of the like I am LA, even though they're not like in LA.
Yeah.
I do that online. I do that, and I don't live in LA. Like I live in Los Angeles County, but I live really like 14 miles from the city of Los Angeles.
Yeah. So for context, LA, and I guess LA County, is the second largest city in the United States. The first biggest being New York. New York is massive. So right behind New York, people don't know this actually, or they forget. So New York is number 1, as big as it is, and LA is number 2. And then number 3 is like a far 3. I don't know, I forget who number 3 is, but it's a far gap. So it's massive, and it's so big that people only go to other parts of it because they have family, they work there, or whatever reason. But this is that time to like remind other people, but also remind ourselves that LA is big and we're all in this shit together,
Yeah.
And to touch on the positive, I'm seeing people everywhere mobilize. Usually when something happens, it's the people who are going to be involved are going to be the people directly affected, and then by proxy. And then from there, it'll just, it'll drip. But this time around, it's happening everywhere. Yeah. The awareness is everywhere. Like this is our Hurricane Katrina, in a sense, our like 9/11. Like going forward, people are going to remember this going forward.
The biggest thing since, I don't know. Since what? I don't know. I don't remember the last time we as like people in LA have experienced something close.
Yeah.
Relatively speaking, the death toll is small compared to like some other catastrophic events.
Yeah.
But that doesn't negate the fact that most people who were affected were people just like us, and not rich people, and not famous people.
We're getting into all that. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, most people around the world are just like, oh, boo-hoo, rich people lost their houses.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, but it's like actually more people are going to be affected by this than you think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is the thing where it's so big that anyone, LA or the greater LA County, knows about this. There's no ignoring it.
Oh, yeah.
So if you live in Torrance, you live in Long Beach.
Yeah.
The other outskirts of LA, they know about it. And maybe they can't physically see the fires from where they live because they're that far, but they know. And there's like no escaping it. We all know about this. And by and far, they're helping. We tried to donate our time this past weekend, and there was an overabundance of help.
Yeah.
That we were turned away from 3 different locations.
Yeah.
In 2 different cities.
And one location twice because they said like come back at this time.
Yeah.
Because that's the next shift. Like we'll take you there.
Yeah.
And we got there like 2 minutes after 12. Not that far after 12, and they were like, "Oh, we're already filled."
Yeah.
And it's just like, wow, you literally can't. You literally can't give your time because there's too many people who want to give their time.
And that's crazy, dude.
And then just like the food everywhere, like the supplies everywhere.
Yeah.
Just like everywhere. It's just like food and resources.
Yeah.
Nobody donated all of that. And we're all just sorting it.
Right.
It's like all from normal, regular people.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest, because I'm an overthinker. So I'm always just thinking about shit. I was so surprised to see all that. And it's still going. We're 1 week in to the fires, and the support is still going. People are still donating their time, their money, supplies. I didn't think it'd be this much, to be honest. Like, I knew there'd be a certain amount, but, like, if you don't live in LA, like, it's hard to explain how much of, like, an overabundance of, like, support there's been. Like, people have been, like we did. We were turned away.
Yeah.
And people, I'm seeing this everywhere. People are being turned away because they have so many volunteers that they don't know what to do with that.
Yeah.
They don't have enough people to even like help organize people coming in to volunteer.
Yeah.
And people are being turned away from donating their supplies because
Yeah.
they already have so much.
Yeah, they're like, we can't take any more
Yeah,
supplies
like
right
that's
now.
fucking crazy. It's usually, like in the news, you always hear like something happens and they need resources. It's rare when you hear an instance where they're being turned away because there's too much stuff, and it's happening everywhere, and that's crazy. This fire has really like galvanized people in a way that, we haven't been alive that long, but I don't think our parents saw anything like this.
Yeah.
Even as they're alive now, they haven't seen anything like this. They've seen like fires to a degree. They've seen more earthquakes than we have
Yeah.
that cause more damage. But as far as like this kind of galvanization, like this is crazy.
I know that what's also crazy is that just 7 days in, there's only been 1.2 billion cost of like damages because of these fires.
Mm,
A billion. I saw this post online where it's like states that have a less population than the entirety of Los Angeles.
I think I saw that.
And it was like 48 states.
Yeah.
It's like the only ones who don't have, the only states are Texas, I think Florida, and New York.
Yeah.
Every other state has less people in it than we do in our cities.
Yeah.
I was like, dang, that's crazy.
Put that into perspective again. These
Yeah.
fires are in this area. You know what I mean? So when you hear in the news that, or not in the news, but just like on social media, people being unempathetic, it's like, dog, like people are being affected by this. Another thing to take into account. So LA is known for its fires. It's been this way since ever. But there's a lot of problems. One problem is that the geography changed because of colonialism. So the natives used to fight fire with fire, literally.
Yeah.
And you can look all this stuff up. But they knew that this area almost insists on being on fire. And they learned how to cope with it. To the point where like the plants in this area, the native plants,
Yeah.
were like natural like fire retardants.
Fireproof. Yeah.
And so part of the reason why someone who's like just on their rag and going off on LA, what they don't understand is that this changed because of white people. Problem number one is that they literally fucked with the soil.
Right.
The ground that we're on, they messed with it. Problem number one. Another problem was that they were bringing plants that are not of the area, such as those pine trees.
Yeah. Eucalyptus trees.
Yeah. And while they look nice, they aren't supposed to be here. So those plants are like helping spread those fires. Another problem, obviously, is pollution. Another problem is, along with that, global warming. So these are the areas that are affected by that. So now that the land here is drier than usual, even when it rains, because it's been dry for so long, the soil can't like accept all that water, essentially. So we had an overabundance of rain about a year ago, which was good, but we still had flooding for many reasons. But one of the reasons was the ground couldn't accept that water,
Yeah.
even though it should have been, but because of all these problems for so long, couldn't accept it. So when you have a fire of this scale, part of the reason why it did the damage it did is because of all those reasons. It's drier than it should be, and the methods of which we used to keep, or the natives used to keep it under control, don't exist anymore.
Oh. Wow. I've heard of things like that, but I never like heard it.
Yeah. Geographically speaking, LA is like really diverse. So you have these mountains, you have hills. Where the Palisades is, it's right along the coast. And in that area specifically, a lot of hills, right? And it's integrated with hills and then those urban areas, suburban areas.
Suburban.
So you have those things coming together. And because you have all this like greenery around those areas, fires spread quickly. It in large part because of those winds. And for context too, the biggest fire in the United States history up to this point was the Chicago fire. So you have two major fires in LA, Palisades and Eaton.
Yeah.
The Eaton one alone is like 3 times the size of the Chicago fire.
Holy crap.
And the Palisades fire is even bigger than that. Literally history right here.
My gosh.
United States history is being
That's crazy.
made right now. Yeah. So as of right now, Eaton fire is 14,000 acres.
Okay. 14,000.
Palisades is essentially 24,000 acres.
24,000.
A week in. So
add those together. 14 plus 24. So 38.
38.
So 38,000 acres just between those two fires alone.
Not accounting for the smaller ones, yeah.
Which is already a little over 25% of what all of 2023 in LA experienced alone in terms of what was burned.
Yep.
So not even 2 weeks into 2025, and we are more than 30% of the way there.
Yeah. And as we record this, it's 1 week in. Yeah, Palisades as of now is at 18% containment, which is a positive because that thing was not budging.
No.
For days, it was not budging.
No.
It was literally, it was expanding, but it was just not being contained. And then Eaton Fire as of now, so 35%. So that one has shown the most progress. So similar scenario, it was just not being contained. And really over, I think as of Friday, they made giant progress as to getting it contained. Too is that in those mountains there's a mountain called Mount Wilson. A lot of our satellite and signal towers are there.
Yeah.
So that's responsible for TV signals, radio signals, also Wi-Fi. So the fire did reach it, and the fear was that obviously we would lose TV,
so much
radio,
infrastructure.
Yeah, and Wi-Fi signal for a good chunk of LA. But if that tower went down, the firefighters would not be able to communicate with one another.
Yeah. Oh, shit.
And had that happen, and again, like the fire reached it, had those towers gone down, we would have had like even bigger problems.
Yeah.
Because they would not have been able to communicate with one another.
Oh, my God.
I don't know if there's like a backup system in place for that.
I doubt it.
Yeah, because this has never happened before. So I don't know. Yeah, maybe the information's out there.
Elon would have come around and been like, I would love to give you guys Starlinks, but you're liberals or some shit like that.
All that shit. So, the winds, right? How would you explain the Santa Ana winds in relation to LA?
The Santa Ana winds are these winds that come like every year. Every year they come.
Yeah.
But you usually don't hear much about it. Like Santa Ana winds used to mean, oh, it's gonna be pretty windy these next few days.
Yeah.
And by that, like, comparison to other cities, it's probably not windy at all. But as of lately, at least within the last, like, 4 years, Santa Ana winds have been this toss-up of, like, it could be really, really bad or not. Because of how more apparent wildfires were happening.
Yeah.
It was always like wildfires would happen in the summer, and the Santa Ana winds are supposed to happen like near the fall, winter, which right now we're in winter. So it was always like this worry that, oh man, if those two were ever to happen at the same time, it would be bad.
Oh, shit.
But they usually come in colder days, so it's like
right.
We expect rain and stuff, right? By this point, we would have already had so much rain. But we've had not a single day of rain in California since, I don't know, some random day in the summer maybe. That's insane.
Technically, it rained but literally, for you guys listening, it was like 1 day's worth of rain somewhere in like October.
Yeah.
And even then, it wasn't like a lot.
It was weak, yeah.
So, and again, that was months ago. So whatever moisture that brought is gone.
Yeah. So because there's no moisture in the air, it's super dry, it's winter, everything's dead. And the Santa Ana winds, which are these gusts of winds, from what I remember, was just like 60-mile-per-hour winds. There was always like random events, like 14 years ago. Specifically, I remember 14 years ago being in high school, the Santa Ana winds came and knocked down so many trees. Yeah.
Yeah. Every once in a while, we get those like really strong winds to where like maybe schools might get shut down.
Yeah.
There's like leaves and shit everywhere the next day.
Car crashes. Yeah.
Dust everywhere. Like it will get in your eye if you're walking. Because it happened.
Yeah.
I remember I was I started, my first year of college. And so at this point I would get I would always walk to school, but I had to get myself to school. And yeah, the winds like not only would push you over, but like shit would fly into your eye if you weren't careful.
Yeah.
Along with that too, like any trees that like had their roots removed, especially if they're like in a suburban environment.
Ooh.
But those trees should not be falling down, but because
They're not rooted deep enough.
they remove the roots so like the roots don't grow out and like mess up the concrete and stuff. They remove the roots, so when strong winds like this happen, they like fall over. Sometimes they'll fall into people's houses or buildings or just create problems, sometimes into power lines depending on the situation. That's part of how these things do become a problem just because of winds alone.
Yeah.
Winds alone. So yeah, so every once in a while, LA has these strong winds. Usually, it's not that big of a problem.
Yeah.
It was just a deadly combination of strong winds, dry weather,
and great conditions. Yeah, great conditions for burning.
No moisture in the area at all, any of the areas. And along with that, because so much of the water resources were being used at once, the water pressure went down. And that's just crazy in itself is crazy to think of. So much water is being used that it lowered the water pressure.
Yeah, because we have enough typically for millions and millions of people.
Yeah. There's so much to look through, but I've seen that the water that firefighters have access to through fire hydrants, they're meant for like suburban areas or like urban areas, so to put down like a building. But they're not meant to be using that water supply for like larger scale, like forest area kind of fires. So that was another problem. They were maxing out a resource that wasn't meant to be used in the way that it was. You can find footage of this. They would have the hose pointed at like a house in those areas. Those winds were so strong, the winds would blow the water away from the house. So the fires were getting bigger, and as the water was being pointed toward that building or house, the water wouldn't reach the house.
Yeah.
It wouldn't reach the fire. And it's like, fuck, dude. Like,
we're talking like 10 feet tall flames.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think you realize how tall 10 feet is. To see a flame 10 feet tall and like 50 feet wide is nothing short of apocalyptic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like something out of a movie.
Yeah.
There's no other way of putting it.
No.
So another problem was that the Palisades fire in particular is right along the coast. A lot of people online were saying, well, just use the water from the ocean. The problems with that. If you went to school, you know this. So ocean water has a lot of salt in it. Problem number one is that if they were to try to funnel that water into like fire trucks, all that salt would quickly erode their equipment.
Calcify, yeah.
It would create a problem very quickly. And probably ruin
a long-term problem.
Long-term problem. And probably fuck shit up before the fires are even put out. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, if you put that water in those areas, it would almost destroy the area too. So the fires would be put out, but you still have a lot of damage in those areas that you maybe couldn't fix.
Yeah, lots of plants can't grow in high salt.
Yeah, it literally damages the soil too.
Yeah.
That's what they used to do back in the day. They would like salt your area after a war.
That's right.
So that shit couldn't grow.
That's right.
So you would be doing that to those areas that you want people to go back to live.
Wow, that's crazy.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there is footage of like the planes from Canada. They were using that water, so some people were saying like, well, they're using it, so clearly it's not a problem. They're using it because it got to a point where there's no option left.
Yeah.
That's how bad this thing is. You're not supposed to.
Yeah.
Which is why they avoided it at first, but it got so bad. And again, like we're going to get into all this, but LA just was not prepared for this. So it got so bad, they had to start using that water. Because of fires at this scale, they can't directly put the water in like the center of the fire because it's so hot. It would just evaporate the water.
And windy.
So yeah, okay, that's a good point. It was so windy that they couldn't use aerial support for either of the big fires.
Yeah.
Palisades or Eaton. Eaton in particular, like, they couldn't fly there for like the first 3 days. Palisades, they kind of could. They just had to be careful. But it was windy that they couldn't do it consistently. We're going on and on about this to really emphasize the scale of this shit.
Yeah, I think the first step in understanding what's going on right now is by first trying to grasp the scale at which this is happening and then affecting people.
Yeah. So all these things are why the fire spread and why it's been hard to contain and also extinguish.
Yeah. how was LA not prepared for this?
Where do we start? So, people like us have been advocating for a better usage of our budget.
Yeah.
So you hear all the time that we need to defund police because it's a problem unto itself, but also it just has so much fucking money that at a certain point, what are they going to do with all that money, you know?
Yeah.
And we're seeing it now. So we have a disaster, 100% disaster in LA. And what is that police department going to do? And they haven't done very much. How I feel about LAPD aside, they're not trained for that. You send the firefighters after these kind of things. Problem being is that while the police budget has increased in billions over the years, they've been cutting from the LAFD. So the fire department in LA has had their budget cut for years and cut even more just recently. I don't know the exact date, but it was cut. So you have people like us that have been, rational enough to think ahead that like something like this could happen. And when it does, again, people have known forever now that California and LA specifically is known for earthquakes and fires.
And fires.
So just thinking very rationally, you would want a group of people in place that are trained to handle those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And so you have people like us that have been pushing for that. We vote for that. We talk about it openly. The governing body in LA disagrees. They disagree with that. So something like this happens. And by the way, the chief of the LAFD, I forget her name, but she has been pushing for an increase in budget for the LAFD. She's been repeatedly been told no. She's been telling them for years. The accountant and accountants of LA controller, have also looked at just the overall data and our budget. They pushed for more resources and funding toward LAFD.
Wow.
And one of those people, our current mayor, Karen Bass, is it Bass? Karen Bass, basically said, "F off. You get none of that." So something like this should have been, the scale of it should have been preventable. The fires would have been there regardless.
Yeah.
But because there wasn't enough aid, it spread the way it did. So when the Palisades fire started, the firefighters in Pasadena were over there, actually.
Yeah.
So that's part of how the Eaton fire started and grew to the size that it did, is that just were not enough personnel to be at both places at once.
Yeah.
It was a perfect storm of craziness.
So now moving forward, how do you think politics are going to affect how we experience this crisis?
So as we were saying earlier, LA seemingly wasn't prepared for this, right? This is an example where whether you vote a certain way or if you don't vote, don't care to vote, the fires didn't care where you sat on the spectrum. If you live in those areas or you live in LA, you're affected by the fires. So it came for you. And if your house was lost, there's no protection in place to prevent from an insurance company exploiting you. There's nothing in place to help you get your house back. There's nothing in place to ensure that you have somewhere to go when this happens. And when these things happen, you go to your governing body and you ask them, what do we do now? And also you ask what's being done to handle the situation. Had more of us voted and paid attention to what policies we were voting for, which people we would have been voting for, we could have had the adequate funds to not prevent the fires, but prevent the scales of damage. And so now we have to deal with where we're at. And while obviously I always push for, like, I don't know if extreme is the right word, but just radical movement from everyday people, still, we have to accept policies that they exist in place as of now. So as of now, our mayor still doesn't care. She'll pay lip service at the very least, but there's no way of knowing she's doing everything she can to address all those concerns. So let's say you didn't lose your house, but like the building that you work at burned down.
Yeah.
You don't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, this entire area has been evacuated, right?
Yeah.
So you can't apply for another job in the area.
No.
And because, again, the scale of these fires, that's a lot of place that you can go to seek work. So what do you do? And there's no policy anywhere saying that they have to cover for you.
The government might do a moratorium where they're like, you can't evict somebody.
Yeah.
Might, like they did during COVID.
And then we're getting to what would we consider like ethical stuff, like
Like we said, gentrification,
Yeah.
mites, right? Renters are increasing money for their tenants. Rent control might balloon as we speak.
Yeah, as we speak.
So that's what I mean about everyday shit. So like, you don't vote, but like, here you go. Like, your cost of living is about to jump. And because we don't already have rent control, now
I was going to say, didn't we in California just reject that proposition that was like for rent control?
yeah. And then we have inmates that are being used as firefighters
Oh God, that's a whole other thing.
because of
30%.
that slavery
30%
again,
of
everyday life.
firefighters.
Yeah. And then how do they get there? It's like people hear the word like inmate, prisoner, whatever, and you think like
They
horrible
deserve it.
people.
They
and
deserve it,
a lot
yeah.
of cases they do, but a lot of cases like they were just caught for like misdemeanor shit.
Yep.
Because it's systemically, our system is designed to do that, so they get funneled into the system where now they're put in jail and now they have to work
That in
for
itself
almost
is,
free.
That in itself is just another series.
Yeah.
Okay, so we just talked about a lot of stuff, and I don't think that we can fit everything we want to say in one episode. So we've got to break this up to at least 3 parts.
This is massive.
Yeah. So what are we going to talk about in part 2 of this conversation?
So we're going to try to take it a step further. We're going to talk about how politics meets your everyday life. Usually we think of these as like 2 separate worlds, 2 separate concerns, but we're going to really try to bring it home how the stuff that you hear about in the news in regards to voting or policies affect you. Whether you vote or not, whether you care or not, they affect you, everyone. Yeah, tune in. We're gonna Luigi the show.
Nice, can't wait.